In 1965, a young Warren Buffett was already one of the most successful investors. In America, he had a system. It worked, and he had no intention of changing it. Then he met Charlie Munger. What happened over the next 50 years is one of the most remarkable partnerships in business history. But here's the part most people don't understand. Munger didn't just help Buffett pick better stocks. He fundamentally rewired how Buffett thinks. And the 5 mental models at the center of that rewiring are what we're covering today. These aren't investing tips. They're thinking tools, frameworks for making better decisions in any domain, under any conditions. Buffett has said that without Munger's influence, Berkshire Hathaway would be worth a fraction of what it is today. Model number 3, by the way, is the one Munger himself called the most powerful idea he ever encountered, and it has almost nothing to do with investing directly. Stay with me. Most people who know the name Charlie Munger know it because of Warren Buffett. That's understandable. Buffett is more famous, more quoted, and more photographed. But within the investing world, among the people who have actually studied both men closely, there's a quiet consensus that Munger may be the more original thinker of the two. Munger spent his career building what he called latticework of mental models. A collection of the most powerful ideas from every major discipline: psychology, physics, mathematics, biology, economics, history. He believed that the best thinkers don't stay inside one field. They pull from all of them. He called people who could only think within a single discipline men with hammers. Because to a man with only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Munger spent 99 years collecting every tool he could find. The 5 models we're covering today are the ones that appear most consistently in his speeches, his letters, and his conversations with Buffett. They're the frameworks that shaped Berkshire's most consequential decisions. Model 1 changed how Buffett evaluates every business he looks at. Model 3, the one I mentioned, is Munger's single most cited idea and the reason Berkshire avoided some of the most expensive mistakes of the last 30 years. And Model 5 is the one that Munger said most people will resist because it requires admitting something deeply uncomfortable about how our own minds work. Let's start from the beginning. Model number 1, inversion. Solve problems backwards. Munger borrowed this idea from the German mathematician Carl Jacobi, who famously advised invert. Always invert. The principle is simple. When you want to achieve something, don't just ask, how do I succeed? Also ask, what would guarantee failure? Then avoid those things. Munger called this one of the most underused thinking tools in existence, and he used it constantly in investing, in business, and in life. When Berkshire evaluates a new business, Munger doesn't just ask, why would this succeed? He asks, why would this fail? What are the conditions under which this business becomes worthless? What are the assumptions that, if wrong, would make this investment a disaster? Munger once gave a famous speech at a graduation ceremony where he promised to tell the graduates how to be guaranteed to have a miserable life, and then listed the behaviors to avoid. The audience laughed, but he was making a serious point. Knowing what not to do is often more valuable than knowing what to do. Before your next major decision, write down every way it could fail, every assumption that would need to be wrong, every scenario that would make you regret the choice. Then ask, have I addressed each of these? The ones you can't answer are your real risks. Model 2 is the framework Munger used to understand why intelligent, educated, experienced people still make catastrophically bad decisions. And it changed how Buffett evaluates management teams forever. Model number 2, the psychology of human misjudgment. 25 cognitive biases. In 1995, Munger delivered a lecture at Harvard called the Psychology of Human Misjudgment. In it, he cataloged 25 cognitive biases, systematic errors in human thinking that cause intelligent people to make predictably bad decisions. He spent years studying psychology, not because it was fashionable, but because he believed you cannot make good decisions without understanding the forces that corrupt decision-making in the first place. The 3 biases Munger returned to most often were incentive-caused bias, social proof, and commitment and consistency bias. Incentive-caused bias. People do what they're rewarded to do, even when it's wrong. Munger always asked, what are the incentive structures here? Who benefits from telling me this? Social proof. We assume something is correct because many people believe it. In markets, this is what creates bubbles. Everyone is buying, so it must be right to buy. Commitment and consistency. Once we've taken a position publicly, we defend it, even when evidence contradicts it. This is why smart investors hold losing positions far too long. They've told people about the trade. Munger believed that knowing these biases existed wasn't enough. You had to build systems and checklists specifically designed to counteract them. Because in the moment, you won't feel biased. You'll feel certain. Before any major investment or business decision, run a bias check. Am I doing this because of social proof? Am I holding this position because I've already committed to it publicly? The answers are uncomfortable. That's exactly the point. And now, Model 3, the one Munger called the single most powerful idea he ever encountered. And once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. Model number 3, the Lollapalooza Effect. When multiple forces combine. Munger coined the term Lollapalooza Effect to describe what happens when multiple psychological biases or forces all push in the same direction simultaneously. The result isn't additive, it's multiplicative. 2 or 3 forces combining don't double the outcome. They can produce effects 10 or 100 times more powerful than any single force alone. He believed this was the explanation for the most extreme outcomes in human history, both the greatest successes and the most catastrophic failures. Munger used the Lollapalooza effect to explain why Berkshire looked for businesses with multiple reinforcing competitive advantages. Not just one moat, but several that compound each other. Coca-Cola is the classic example. It has brand recognition, distribution scale, pricing power, emotional association, habit formation. Each of these is a competitive advantage. Individually, together, they create an almost impenetrable fortress that has resisted every competitor for over a century. He also used it to explain financial bubbles. A bubble isn't caused by one factor. It's caused by multiple biases, firing simultaneously. Social proof, incentive-caused bias, availability bias, commitment, consistency. When all of these align, the result is irrational exuberance on a historic scale. Munger said that if you can identify when multiple forces are aligning in the same direction, in markets, in business, in life, you can predict extreme outcomes with more confidence than almost any other method. When evaluating any investment, don't look for one reason it will succeed. Look for multiple independent forces that all point in the same direction. The more forces align, the more confident your conviction should be. Conversely, when evaluating risks, look for situations where multiple negative forces are converging. Those are the situations to exit before the Lollapalooza works against you. Model 4 is the one that most directly explains how Munger and Buffett decide what to buy, and it's simpler than most people expect. Model number 4, circle of competence. Know what you don't know. You heard Buffett's version of this in the first video of this series, but Munger's framing is different and sharper. Munger believed the most dangerous investor isn't the one who doesn't know something. It's the one who doesn't know what they don't know. He called this knowing the edge of your circle, and he argued that most people dramatically overestimate how large their circle actually is. Munger spent his career building deep expertise in a small number of industries: insurance, banking, consumer brands, and a handful of others. Within those areas, he had genuine edge. Outside them, he deferred or avoided entirely. He was explicit about this. When asked about industries he didn't understand, he didn't offer a view. He said he didn't have one. This kind of intellectual honesty is extraordinarily rare. He also made a distinction that most people miss. The size of your circle doesn't matter as much as knowing its boundaries precisely. A small circle with clear edges beats a large circle with fuzzy ones every time, because the investor who knows exactly where their knowledge ends will never venture into territory where they're guessing while believing they're certain. Draw your circle honestly, not aspirationally. Honestly, for every industry you think you understand, ask, could I explain the unit economics, the competitive dynamics, the regulatory environment, and the 10-year demand outlook in plain language? If not, it's outside your circle. And the final model, Model 5, the one Munger said most people resist, because applying it correctly requires admitting something about yourself that our egos make almost impossible to accept. Model number 5, sit on your ass investing, the power of extreme patience. Munger called it sit on your ass investing, and he meant it literally. His argument was that the investment industry has a structural problem. It rewards activity. Fund managers are paid to do things, to trade, to rebalance, to generate reports, to hold meetings. The incentive structure pushes toward action, regardless of whether action is warranted. Munger believed the opposite, that the correct action for most investors, most of the time, is to do nothing. Munger estimated that across his entire career, most of his wealth was generated by fewer than 20 decisions, not 200, not 2,000, 20. He compared great investing to playing poker. The best players don't play every hand. They wait, they fold constantly, and when they finally see a hand worth playing, they bet big. The discipline to fold over and over, while watching others act, is what creates the edge. This is the model most investors resist, because inaction feels like failure. In a world of financial news, market commentary, and brokerage apps that reward engagement, sitting still feels wrong. Munger argued it was the hardest and most valuable skill in the game. Count how many investment decisions you've made in the last 12 months. Now ask honestly, how many of those were genuinely necessary? How many were driven by boredom, anxiety, or the fear of missing out? Munger's standard was simple. Only act when the opportunity is so clear, so asymmetric, and so within your circle of competence, that not acting would be the obvious mistake. Everything else is noise. 5 models, 1 latticework, built over 99 years by a man who read obsessively, thought independently, and had the intellectual courage to say, I don't know, when everyone else was offering opinions. Let's bring them together. Model 1, Inversion. Don't just ask how to succeed. Ask what guarantees failure, and eliminate those things first. Model 2, Psychology of Misjudgment. Understand the 25 cognitive biases that corrupt your thinking, because you will feel certain in the moments you're most wrong. Model 3, the Lollapalooza Effect. Look for situations where multiple forces align in the same direction. That's where the extreme outcomes live. Model 4, Circle of Competence. Know exactly where your knowledge ends. A small circle with clear edges is more valuable than a large circle with fuzzy ones. Model 5, Sit on your ass. Most of your wealth will come from very few decisions. The discipline to do nothing, most of the time, is the actual strategy. Here is the thing that ties all 5 together. None of these models are complicated. None require an advanced degree, or special access, or proprietary data. What they require is something rarer than intelligence. They require intellectual honesty, the willingness to be wrong, to not know, to wait, to invert your own assumptions. Munger believed that most people have the capability to think this way. Very few develop the habit. The difference between the two groups, compounded over a lifetime, is extraordinary. If what we've covered today resonated, the next video in this series goes into Ray Dalio's framework. Dalio built a $160 billion hedge fund using a completely different system from both Buffett and Munger. One based on economic cycles, diversification across asset classes, and a radical approach to risk that most investors have never encountered. That video is right here.